Hey everyone, Brendan Sander here. How are you? Thank you so much for joining me and welcome to Top 10 Glam Metal Albums of All Time. So the genre itself had foundations laid all the way back in 1981 with bands like Motley Crue and Dokken, and then continued on with bands like Rat in 1983. Now glam metal fully kicked off in 1986 with Poison and Cinderella, hitting its peak in 1989 and 1990, but then unfortunately being unceremoniously kicked off the podium in 1991 by grunge and really the lack of support from record labels and media and things of that nature. It would continue into 1992 and finally go underground by 1994. So join me now as I count down the top 10 glam metal albums of all time. But before we get started, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by turning on notifications, you're gonna stay up to date on really cool episodes just like this with the top 10 glam metal albums of all time. All right, so as a little sort of precursor here, I did want to say I chose not to include Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction simply because I don't really consider them a glam metal band. They did come out in the era, they did start off with that, but they did strip that away pretty quickly and really rose above it. So as much as I love that album, and I know you guys know I do, I opted not to include it in here and actually focus on what I would consider to be real straight up glam metal bands and that sort. So kicking off at number 10, Winger, self-titled release from 1988, debut studio album produced by Beau Hill, who worked with Rat, Kix, Warrant, and the band itself featuring, of course, namesake Kip Winger on bass and vocals coming from Alice Cooper. We got Red Beach on guitar, who would go on to White Snake and Dokken and others. Paul Taylor on guitar and keyboards, who would go off and record and play with Steve Perry of Journey. And then Rod Morgenstein on drums coming from the Dixie Dregs. So there was already a few key members in here to give them some notoriety when they first came out. And while the album itself is fully rooted in glam metal, they do incorporate a progressive twist to the music, which not a lot of bands did, really helping to set them apart. And I did want to point this out. On the album itself, it does say Sahara down here, which is not the name of the album. It would have made sense if it was, but the band was actually called Sahara originally and then changed the name to Winger. So that's why that appeared on there. 1 million copies sold in the US, featuring the hits Madeline, Hungry, 17, which was actually a number 26 Billboard Hot 100 hit, so a top 40 there. And another top 40 with Headed for a Heartbreak, which went all the way to number 19. Coming in at number 9, Extreme, Pornography from 1990, their second studio album, produced by Michael Wagner, who worked with Dokken, Skid Row, Great White, another good band that I wanted to include here but didn't get an opportunity to. 2 million copies of this sold in the US. The band features, of course, Gary Cherone on vocals, who would go on to Van Halen, and Nuno Bettencourt on guitar, who's currently out playing with, if you can believe it, Rihanna. Just played the Super Bowl, so congrats to him. But the band mixed glam metal sound with many outside styles, something very different that not a lot of bands were doing. Funk, rap, folk, soul, R&B, you name it. They mixed a little bit of everything in, again helping to create a unique blended sound. And the album itself featured the hits Decadence Dance, Get the Funk Out, and More Than Words, which went all the way to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. And then topped it off with Wholehearted. Okay, coming in at number 8, Slaughter, Stick It To You from 1990. Debut studio album produced by Dana Strum and Mark Slaughter, bassist and vocalist of the band, or both of them together, bassist and vocalist, but they came from the Vinnie Vincent Invasion, which is former Kiss guitarist Vinnie Vincent. So those two guys, when that was all coming apart, formed this band here, and this album really just had all the hallmarks of classic glam metal era, but I think they did it better than most bands, and that's why this one here stands head and shoulders above so many others. Ultimately going on to sell 2 million copies and featuring the hits Up All Night, which was a number 27 Billboard Hot 100 hit. Flight of the Angels went to number 19. Spend My Life went to number 39, and then finishing off with Mad About You. But 3 top 40 hits off this album just shows you how successful they were back in the day. Okay, coming in at number 7, Warrant, Cherry Pie from 1990, second studio album, produced by Beau Hill, who worked with Winger, Rat, and Kix, among others. And the band was known for singing or having songs that were very like sort of sing-along style and doing the gang vocal during the chorus and things like that. 2 million copies sold in the US and would feature the hits Cherry Pie, which was a number 10 Billboard Hot 100 hit. Didn't realize that one made it all the way to number 10. Uncle Tom's Cabin, which went to number 19, and then I Saw Red, another top 10 Billboard Hot 100 hit for them. So again, just looking back at this now when I'm doing this countdown and stuff and finding out how many top 40 hits that these bands had really shows that despite kind of the rap that glam metal gets today, they were hugely successful. All right, moving on to number 6, Cinderella, Long Cold Winter from 1988, their second studio album, and produced by Andy Johns, which I didn't realize until I had looked up to do this video here, who of course worked with Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin. But I think now that I know that and understand what the band is about, it makes a lot of sense because they mixed a good deal of blues rock in with that glam metal sound, and more so than most other bands of that era, maybe other than say Great White or something. But the way that they did it here, I think, again, just set them apart from the masses. This album would sell 3 million copies and feature the hits Gypsy Rose, Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone, which was a number 12 Billboard Hot 100 hit. Coming Home went to number 20, and The Last Mile went to number 36. So they had 3 top 40 hits as well. Coming in at number 5, Skid Row, self-titled release from 1989. And I know a lot of you guys say that Skid Row was not a glam metal band, and maybe they dropped a lot of that by the second and third albums and stuff like that, but this album here is full on glam metal in my opinion, and that's why it's getting included here. Produced by Michael Wagner, who we talked about earlier and has worked with Doc and Great White and Extreme, and another band that used the gang vocal style to great effect. But of course, you throw into this mix one of the best, if not the best, glam metal vocalist of them all, Sebastian Bach, and you have another one that is just at the top of its game in terms of quality. 5 million copies sold in the US and featuring the hits Youth Gone Wild, 18 in Life, which went all the way to number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, and then I Remember You, which went to number 6. Interesting to see that 18 in Life went higher than the big ballad I Remember You, but you know, always comes down to everything else that's on the charts at the time and so forth. All right, coming in at number 4, and the reason I'm wearing this shirt here, Rat, Detonator from 1990, 5th studio album. And I know a lot of you guys would pick a different Rat album to be on here that sold more and so forth, but for me, this album here is where it's at. It was produced by Sir Arthur Payson, who was part of Desmond Child's production team. A lot of people, including myself in the past, thought that it was Desmond Child under a pseudonym. Desmond Child has come forward and said absolutely not. This was a real person and so forth. So I'm going to go with that for at least now. The album features co-writes by Desmond Child on most all the songs here. And it just makes every song on here outstanding. Literally not a bad song on this album, which is why I'm choosing it here to be the Rat representation, I guess, if you will, but it's also personally my favorite Rat album. Only sold 500,000 copies. Obviously, other Rat albums sold more in the past and had bigger hits and things of that nature, but in terms of a top-notch glam metal album, this one is it for me, at least. Featuring Lovin' You's a Dirty Job, Shame, 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 and Giving Yourself Away. All right, moving on to number 3, Poison, Open Up and Say Ah from 1988, their second studio album, produced by Tom Werman, who's worked with LA Guns, Kix, Motley Crue, and this is just one of the absolute definitive glam metal albums of the era. It's a feel-good party album. 5 million copies sold in the US, featuring the hits Nothing But a Good Time, which is a number 6 Billboard Hot 100 hit. Fallen Angel went to number 12. Every Rose Has Its Thorn climbed all the way to the top of the charts at number 1. And then even the cover song, Your Mama Don't Dance, was a top 10 Billboard hit at number 10. All right, coming in at number 2, Def Leppard, Hysteria from 1987, their fourth studio album. And yes, I know they started as a new wave of British heavy metal band, but they shed that pretty quick. And for me at least, this album here is firmly rooted in glam metal. It's got amazing production by Robert John Mutt Lange, who is a key factor in this and often considered the sixth member of the band for what he was able to do for this album and so forth. But the album just sent every 80s band at that time scrambling to mimic the sound. Would go on to sell 12 million copies in the US alone and featured 7 big hits coming off of it. Women, Rocket, which was a number 12 hit on the Billboard Hot 100. Animal would go to 19. Love Bites, the only number 1 song on the album, but having a number 1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100 is a big deal. Pour Some Sugar on Me went to number 2. Armageddon, it went to number 3. And Hysteria was a top 10 hit at number 10. So 7 hit singles off this thing. As Robert John Mutt Lange said at the time, he was looking to make a rock thriller album in terms of Michael Jackson's Thriller having 7 singles come off of it. And that's what he did here with this, having 7 major singles. All right, and the number 1 glam metal album of all time, Motley Crue, Dr. Feelgood from 1989, 5th studio album, topping the Billboard 200 album chart at number 1, produced by Bob Rock, known for working with Metallica and The Cult. One of the definitive albums of the era itself, having a huge impact on the scene, and one of the last big impacts of that market, just flooded it with copycats and everything thereafter. Of course, before it all began to come crumbling down just a few short years after this. The album itself would sell 6 million copies, one of the biggest selling albums next to Def Leppard's Hysteria. And if we're going to throw in Guns N' Roses, in there, we can count it as part of that. But a big album of the era itself, featuring quite a few hits, 5 in fact. Dr. Feelgood would go to number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Kickstart My Heart was a number 27 hit. Without You was top 10 at number 8. Don't Go Away Mad was number 19, and Same Old Situation, which they're still playing in concert to this day. Never understood why you don't play Without You, being a top 10 hit. Such a good song. But either way, there you go. That is the top 10 glam metal albums of all time, at least as I see it. I'm sure you guys have difference of opinion on some of these here. Let me know which ones you would include, which ones you dropped, etc. All right, everyone. Take care. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.